Welcome to another episode of Digging for Gold. I'm your host, Dan Goldberg. I'm also on TikTok at Bearded Brilliance and on Instagram as well, Bearded Brilliance for you. And if you're watching this on YouTube or trying to get it on YouTube, it's Dan G, the number 4, the letter U, the number 2, and obviously on Spotify and all the other podcast channels. It's Digging for Gold. Today's guest is a very, very special guest. His name is Mort Klein. He's the president of the Zionist Organization of America. He has worked in the Nixon, Ford, and Carter administrations as an economist. And he heads an organization that has an impact all over the world. Welcome, Mort.
Dan, it's good to be with you. I think we've known each other for between 60 and 100 years. I'm not sure the exact number.
I think it's 160 years.
It might be.
We flipped that. So Mort and I, truth be told, like a number of other guests here, went to high school together here in Philadelphia. And the first question I want to ask you, because as soon as people hear now in today's world, the way things are, Zionist Organization of America, the word Zionist has taken on a very, very strange, twisted definition to some people. What is a Zionist? What does Zion mean?
It's a very simple word. All it means is, if one is a Zionist, is one supports the right of the Jews to have to live in their own ancient homeland, promised to the Jewish people by God for those who believe in the Bible, promised to the Jewish people by England under the Balfour Declaration in 1917 when England controlled it, and many other international legal resolutions, including the United Nations Charter Article 80 in 1945, simply reiterating the Balfour, saying the Jews have a right to this land. So a Zionist is simply somebody who supports the right of Jews to have their own homeland. Just like the Muslims have 57 Muslim countries, 57, and the Arabs have 22 Arab countries, Zionism just talks about one Jewish country, one little Jewish country for the Jewish people. That's all Zionism is. Zionism is the support of the right of Jews to have their own country.
A country the size of New Jersey.
Even a little smaller.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And if you look at the map, you can barely see it relative to the size of the other countries around.
All the Middle Eastern countries have the names on the map in the middle of their country. Israel is so small, they have to put the name in the Mediterranean Sea because it doesn't fit in the actual size on the map of Israel.
It's incredible. And this goes back. I love the way people talk about love in a strange way, that Israel was founded in 1948. I usually say Israel was reborn in 1948.
That is correct.
Because how old is it?
Well, it's several thousands of years since it was promised to God, and the Jews had their kingdom for several thousand years until the year until 2,000 years ago, when the Romans attacked Israel and destroyed the country. In fact, this area was always known as Judea and Samaria. That's why we are Jews, by the way. We are Judeans. We come from Judea. Jew is a contraction of the word Judean. And when the Romans captured Israel, or Judea, the Jewish homeland, to give grief to the Jews, they renamed it Philistinia. Philistinia, because the Philistines were the arch enemy of the Jewish people at the time. And in order to really give grief and anguish to the Jewish people, they renamed the Jewish people's ancient homeland Philistinia, which now has become the word Palestine, from Philistinia. And since this happened, there has never been a state of Palestine. Never. For the last 2,000 years. It was just a region, like the Sahara Desert is a region. Palestine was a region. There are no Palestinian kings and queens. There's no Palestinian coins or currency or postage stamps. Never was a country. So people have this misbelief that the Jews took away the Arabs' homeland of Palestine, when in fact there was never an Arab land of Palestine. In fact, many other peoples other than Arabs lived there for most of that time, including the Jews. The Jews have had a presence there for thousands of years to this minute. Mm-hmm. In fact, Jerusalem has had a majority of people in Jerusalem. Since the first census in the mid-1800s, the majority of the people living in Jerusalem since the mid-1800s, Jews. Jews have been the majority in Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is mentioned 700 times in the Jewish holy books. Do you know how many times it's mentioned in the Arab Muslim holy book, the Quran? 0. It's never mentioned. It is not holy to Muslims. They simply want to take Jerusalem away from the Jews to really hurt us badly, to cause us pain.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but at one time there was a greater Israel, which included part of Jordan, if I remember. and that was restructured under the British.
In the Bible, God gave, in the Bible, God gave much more than that. Iraq, Jordan, the Sinai, many other parts, Gaza, of course, were the ancient homeland. And when it came down to Palestine in 1917, when the British, who controlled this area of Palestine, in 1917, said all of this land should go to the Jewish people, it's their right, including Jordan. Palestine included Jordan, Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, Israel proper, and Gaza. All of that was Palestine. All of that land was given to the Jews. In 1923, for various reasons, the British gave 80% of the original Palestine, it's supposed to be the Jewish state, to Jordan. Then it was called Transjordan, across the Jordan River, Transjordan. So the Arabs actually have gotten already 80% of original Palestine. The Jews only got 20%. And that is, of course, never discussed, never talked about, but that is a fact.
You never hear that. You don't hear that, and you don't also hear much about the peace proposals that Israel has made with the quote-unquote Palestinians, with the Arabs and the Muslims in that area, and how many times that has been neglected by them, or they gave it a big no. Okay.
Well,
so from the beginning,
the Arabs, and by the way, the Arabs were never called Palestinians until the late 60s.
That was Yasser Arafat. Am I correct?
Yasser Arafat and others started to cleverly call themselves Palestinians to differentiate themselves from the Arabs, even though they are a part of the Arab world, in order to say we're a separate people, we want land. But the Arabs have been offered a state 8 times, in the last 80 years. The first time was 1937. The Peel Commission of England offered the Arabs 95% of the rest of Palestine. Remember, Jordan already had 80% of it. Mm-hmm. So the rest of it, 20% of original Palestine, the British offered the Arabs 95% of it, the Jews 5%, the Arabs said no. In 1947, the UN split the rest of Palestine, the 20% left, for an Arab state and a Jewish state. The Jews said yes, and 6 Arab nations said no, and invaded Israel and killed 1% of the Jewish population there in a terrible war. They refused to accept the state then. From 1948 to 1967, the Arabs controlled themselves all of Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, all of Gaza, half of Jerusalem. They controlled all of it. Did they set up a Palestinian state when they controlled it? They could have just said, "Here, this is a state of Palestine." No. Did the Arabs start hijacking Jordanian and Egyptian planes, saying, "We want Judea and Samaria and Gaza for a state"? No. Because their interest is not a state. It's destroying Israel and killing Jewish people. And in the last 20 years, 4 more times they were offered a state. in virtually all of Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, all of Gaza, half of Jerusalem. Ehud Barak, and Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, offered it to the Arabs, to Arafat and then Abbas, and they said no every time. When I asked Prime Minister Olmert, why did Abbas turn down your insane offer? It wasn't even a compromise. You gave Abbas everything that he wanted, 97% of Judea and Samaria, and you gave 3% of Israel proper to make up for the 3% of the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, you couldn't give because there's 500,000 Jews there. You can't throw 500,000 Jews out. So you gave him more land of Israel proper and half of Jerusalem. Why did he turn it down? You gave him everything he offered. It was not a compromise. This was insane. He said, Mahmoud Abbas, the Holocaust-denying president of the Palestinian Authority, I said Holocaust, his PhD thesis at a Moscow university, the whole thesis is how the Holocaust was a lie. He said, I can't sign it unless you get rid of 3 clauses. This is Olmert talking to me directly. You have to get rid of the clause saying we accept Israel as a Jewish state. We'll never accept Israel as a Jewish state. You got to get rid of that clause. You got to get rid of the clause limiting the number of Arabs we bring into Israel to 150,000. We want no limits. We would bring millions of Arabs into Israel, which would end Israel as a Jewish state. You got to get rid of that clause. And thirdly, Abbas said to Olmert, you have to get rid of the clause that says no further claims. And Olmert said to me, he said to Abbas, but that's the deal. I'm giving you everything. There's no further claims. It's over. And Abbas said, I will never sign no further claims, making it crystal clear their war doesn't end until Israel's destroyed. That's the goal, not a Palestinian state. So people who condemn Israel, saying the Arabs should have a state, they've actually been offered a state 8 times in 80 years.
The thing that strikes me, especially now being August 27th, 2025, if you're watching it at another time, and as you know, that there's the war in Gaza and parts of Lebanon and so forth, and with the Houthis. Gaza was evacuated by Israel. There were no Jews living in Israel.
Not evacuated. They forcibly removed 10,000 Jews from a part of Gaza and northern Samaria.
That's the Israelis, the IDF. Forced 10,000 Jews out, right? Their own people, to give it to the Arabs.
They gave it all to the Arabs.
Including businesses.
Including dozens of greenhouses that produced over half the fruits and vegetables and flowers, I might add, of Israel. These were extraordinary greenhouses given to them, and the Arabs said, we don't want anything from the filthy Jews that's theirs. And they destroyed all the greenhouses. As opposed to making a beautiful living from the greenhouses, they destroyed them all. So, and then they had an election.
Right.
They had an election, and Israel said, we don't want to permit Hamas, the overt terrorist group. They're all terrorist groups. Abbas is a terrorist. But the overt terrorist group to run the election. And Condoleezza Rice, who was our Secretary of State at the time, saying, look, it's a democracy. It's going to be a democracy. Let him run. No one's going to vote for him. So let him run. Well, they ran and they won. So the Gaza Arabs wanted the most extreme Arab Muslim terrorist group to run Gaza, whose charter that exists to this minute calls for the murder of every Jew on earth. That means you and me and every Jew in America, as well as every Jew in the Middle East, and the destruction of Israel. That's their charter that exists right now. So when you talk about the Gaza Arabs, these are not innocent civilians. They are murderous, Jew-hating, Christian-hating, by the way. They destroyed many of the churches there. That's still ongoing in Egypt. They're destroying the churches.
Yeah, the Coptic Christians.
The Coptic Christians, that's exactly right.
So
this is who they chose. And by the way, a new poll came out a few weeks ago. Right now, 90% of the Arabs, Gaza Arabs, support Hamas. 93% of the Gaza Arabs support what happened on October 7th, where 1,200 Jews were brutally murdered, raped, and tortured. And almost every Gaza Arab supports it. In fact, half of the 6,000 Arab terrorists who went into Israel to commit these atrocities, over half of them were civilians, not members of Hamas. Over half were civilians. And when they kidnapped 252, mostly almost all Jews from Israel, and brought them into Gaza, the Gaza Arabs were in the streets cheering and chanting and singing, handing out candies to everyone, celebrating the kidnapping of innocent Jewish civilians. So I have no sympathy for the Gaza Arabs. They're vile, vicious terrorists who want to kill every Jew and every Christian on the face of the earth. They support Islamicizing the world, having the world being ruled by an Islamic caliphate.
Which is different than Muslims, just straight Muslims. And we both have friends that are Muslims, okay, that we get along with.
No. Every poll that's been done of the Muslims in the Middle East.
In the Middle East, okay. Right.
75 to 95% are anti-Semitic, or Jew haters and Christian haters. This is the ordinary civilians of the Middle East. And when you have polls of Muslims outside of the Middle East, well over half are anti-Semitic and anti-Christian. And by the way, 99% are anti-gay. 99%. In fact, they kill all the gays in the Middle East. When you turn out that people find out you're gay, they throw you off the rooftops. So no, this is a problem of the Muslim people and Islam, not just a small group of them, unfortunately.
And why is it that there is such a thing? We'll talk about anti-Semitism. Where does it come from? In your estimation, where does anti-Semitism come from? It's like all I want to know is, why do people hate the Jews? When, to me anyway, Islam, if you know Islam, is sort of modeled after Judaism. Jews pray 3 times a day, Muslims pray 5 times a day. Jews eat kosher, Muslims eat halal. And of course, Jews were founded thousands of years before Muhammad and Islam. And obviously Christianity is based on Judaism, and Jesus was Jewish. So I don't understand anti-Semitism. I know it exists. I know it exists, but...
Well, that's a major topic in and of itself. That's very complicated, and no one quite understands it. But there's a discomfort among the peoples of the world that the Jews gave the world a blueprint by which to live, moral laws, the 10 Commandments by which to live by. And there's some intrinsic feeling deep into many people's souls that we don't like the fact that Jews have told the world through the Bible, through the Torah, of how to live and having moral standards, no adultery, no stealing, no nothing. In fact, it's a famous scene in one of Mel Brooks's movies where he comes down with the 10 Commandments and he says to everyone, he's playing Moses, Mel Brooks, he's telling everyone, there's 10 Commandments, there's good news and bad news. He said, the good news is there's only 10. The bad news, you can't commit adultery anymore. So I think it's a complicated question. I don't know if anyone understands it. I think a factor of having hostility toward Jews is the Jews bringing morality, rules of how one should behave. And I think many humans are not pleased that this is a part of the world. But I don't. But no. People try to explain it. There's almost no real explanation.
No.
Because the Jews are the least criminal, and among the most productive, maybe the most productive people on the face of the earth. So people should appreciate us tremendously. That's why 20% of all the Nobel Prizes have been given to Jews, even though we're a fraction of 1% of the people. In fact, 40% of the science prizes have been given to Jews.
Look, the cell phone was invented by a Jew.
The cell phone is a Jew.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There's a book called The Gifts of the Jews. I forget that Callahan or.
It was an Irishman who wrote it.
Yeah, an Irishman who wrote it. He also wrote how the Irish changed Western civilization. He wrote a number of books. Look it up. for our audience, look it up, The Gifts of the Jews. And I've read it. It was an interesting book, a good book. So that brings us really to now, okay? And the war that's being fought. And when I see comments about it, and usually it's people freaking out about supposed starvation and things like that, okay? It's Israel, they make it Israel's fault. You'll excuse me, but it's somebody from the United States, because it said United States on my phone. So pardon me, folks. That's what happens when you're in the company of such a famous person. The Congress calls me. But I always want to ask people that freak out about it, I want to say, well, what would you have done? What would you have done if all these people attacked your people, and you know that they're hiding in tunnels and people's homes and so forth? How would you have retaliated? What would you have done? How would you have gotten the hostages out? It's very, and I never get an answer.
It's even more bigger than that. Since Hamas has controlled Gaza, since 2005, they're dictators, right? There's been no election since 2005, something like that. There have been 30,000 missiles launched into Israel in the last 20 years. They're launching missiles all the time. This is not the first, this is the biggest horror, but not the first horror. So Israel, southern Israel, has been living with missiles and rockets from Hamas for the last 30 years, and from Hezbollah in Lebanon for the last 30 years as well. They have to run into shelters all the time with sirens, and the children, of course, are traumatized. They all have all sorts of psychological issues because of this. So it's 20 years of missiles and missiles, and then culminating in this nightmare of atrocities that happened 2 years ago, of 1,200 Jews murdered, raped, and tortured. And Israel said, we can't live in southern Israel with Hamas in power. We've been trying to live with them, ignoring the missiles, but now we have to get rid of Hamas, because the people of Israel cannot allow this to happen again. And the Hamas leaders, by the way, in the last 2 years, have made repeated speeches. We're going to do what happened on October 7th, this nightmare of atrocities, again and again and again and again and again and again. They said like 5 or 6 agains. So that's why Israel has no choice. They've got to destroy Hamas. If America had 30,000 missiles from Mexico in the last 20 years, and then Mexico came in and massacred thousands of Americans, would we allow the terrorist group in Mexico to continue to survive, to threaten us again? No, we go in there and have to destroy them. And unfortunately, it's taken longer than thought. But all Hamas has to do is release the hostages, lay down their arms, and the war ends. But the war dare not end before Hamas is destroyed. Otherwise, Hamas remains in power and they win.
Yeah, and then they will do it again and again and again. I mean,
they promised
said
themselves. By the way, the co-founder of Hamas, Mohammed al-Zahar, did a podcast just like we're doing here 6 months ago. And he said, I want the world to understand. This is one of the big leaders of Hamas. I want the world to understand. First, we're going to kill all the Jews. Absolutely. All over the world. But I want the world to understand, after we kill all the Jews, we're going to kill all the Christians and all the other non-Muslims. And then we're going to take over the world, establish an Islamic caliphate ruling the world under Sharia law. The co-founder of Hamas openly says, I'm killing all non-Muslims, and we will run the world.
On a podcast.
On a podcast. You can get it on the internet. Mohammed al-Zahar. And Israel is fighting this war for the West, for Europe, for America. This is our war here in America as much as Israel's war. Israel's closer to these terrorists.
Right.
We're further away, but they want all of us.
But they did. We were affected by it, on September 11th, we were affected by it.
So I think 19 Muslims destroyed the World Trade Center, killing 3,000 Americans, innocent Americans. And when on that day, when that happened on 9/11, which is coming up, Arabs in America in various cities in New Jersey
You're right.
got on the roofs cheering and handing out candy again and praising it. This is a religious war. This is not about land. If it was about land, it would have ended because Israel offered them their own holy Jewish land, offered it to them, and they refused to accept it. This is a religious war in the Koran to destroy non-Muslims. And that's why nothing has worked. And that's why we have to thank Israel for being in the front lines fighting this war against the Muslims who want to destroy not only Jews in Israel, but the West and the Christians.
So it's first the Saturday people, then the Sunday people.
In their chants in Iran and elsewhere, when they have rallies like every week, they chant first the Saturday people, next the Sunday people. First the Jews, next the Christians. America is the big Satan, Israel's the little Satan. So America is the big fish. They're the ones they really want to destroy because America is so powerful. So no, this is not just a war against Israel or Jews. It's against the entire western part of the world, of which we're the most important part.
Well, and they're very good at propaganda. They're very good at saying that, whether you can discuss this, whether it's appropriate or not for them to say that there's starvation and these little kids are being starved. And of course, I have seen pictures of a kid that was emaciated, but it turned out he had a genetic disease. And I just saw a post in reaction to something that someone else wrote about the war. And they said, please help us because food is too expensive here. That was a woman who said, I am living in Gaza and the food is too expensive. So what I glean from that is, and what I've heard, is when the aid comes in, it's appropriated by Hamas.
Hamas steals the aid and shoots Gaza Arabs who are trying to get to the food. They steal the food and sell it at extreme prices. But there is no starvation in Gaza. This is a terrible propaganda lie. It is almost, I'll tell you, some of the scenes on television, it's like Saturday Night Live. Now, why do I say that? You see people on CBS News, you'll see a very heavy woman screaming that we're starving here in Gaza. A very heavy woman screaming it on television. It's a joke. And then she'll hold up a baby who's very thin and emaciated. It turns out a baby has a disease. It's not starvation. While the baby's brother is standing next to this baby looking perfectly normal. Why aren't they all looking thin? Because this is one of the great ugly lies. And people are believing it. And you know, growing up, I used to read about the lies against the Jews during the Middle Ages. The lies that the Jews are poisoning all the wells to kill all the Christians. The lies that the Jews murder Christian children to get their blood, to make matzah out of their blood, which, of course, an insane lie. And I used to, growing up, I think to myself, how could people in the Middle Ages believe this nonsense? But look where we are now.
Yeah.
They're believing the nonsense that the Gaza Arabs are starving and that there's genocide. We're in the middle of a war. Over half the people who've been killed are terrorists. And in the war, civilians die. This is the lowest ratio of civilians dying in a war compared to combatants, soldiers, terrorists, in any war in history. It's a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 ratio of civilians to combatants. Your typical war is 7-to-1 civilians to combatants, or 10-to-1, or more, or hundreds to 1. So this is the most moral war that has ever been fought by any country, Israel, and yet they're condemning Israel for being immoral. And remember, these Gaza Arabs are not lovely, innocent civilians. They support Hamas. They support murdering Jews. And isn't it peculiar that people are screaming about the civilians in Gaza? Why is no one screaming about the Ukrainian civilians, tens of thousands of whom have been killed in this Russia-Ukraine war? The tens of thousands of Russian civilians have been killed. Do you hear one word about it?
Nothing.
Do you hear one word about the Ethiopians and the Somalians and Sudanese in wars right now? By the hundreds of thousands of civilians being killed, not a word. Why do you only hear about the Arab civilians? For one reason. It is a way to condemn and attack Jews. This is pure Jew hatred, these lies.
I agree with you, because I've been to Nigeria. I had a business in Nigeria, and I know Boko Haram. They have slaughtered hundreds of thousands of Christian Nigerians. Hundreds of thousands.
Continuing to this day.
Yes, and you never hear about it. No one talks about it. They go into villages and they just kill everybody there.
They go to churches on a Sunday morning and machine gun hundreds of Christians dead. And it's hardly reported.
It's not reported, yeah.
Because imagine if the Jews went into a church, it would be, nightmare resolutions at the UN, the whole world would go crazy.
Right. Which is interesting. The UN has, correct me if I'm wrong, has more resolutions against Israel than any other country by far.
They have more anti-Israel phony resolutions against Israel than all the other negative resolutions against other countries combined. Do you think there might be a Jew issue here?
And here's the crazy part. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, because you know more about this than me. There are maybe about 15 million Jews in the world out of maybe 8.5 billion people. Any other group that was vilified like that, the people would say they're being bullied. If a person is a weaker person, a smaller group is being beaten up all the time, or tried to be killed, they would say they're being bullied. And we had a whole campaign here of stop bullying. The Jews have been bullied for thousands of years, and eventually somebody has to say that's enough.
It was enough 1,000 years ago.
It was. And interestingly enough, when I was in the service in the United States Army, I went in and I was on active duty in 1967. And in my company, I was the only Jewish soldier. But there was a certain respect for me because of what Israel did in the 1967 war. I don't know what it would have been like if that didn't happen, but they even said it to me. Your people, they said, your people did an amazing thing. But I don't know how long that would last, right? And obviously it didn't last that long. But it's a constant bullying. And eventually something has to give. And that's this. For the world, in my estimation, not to side with Israel after that brutal October 7th in 2023. They sided for a day, and the next day it was over. It was blamed on the Jews. Why are they called the occupiers of a land that's theirs?
Yeah, we're occupiers of Judea.
Right.
We are Judeans. We're the intrinsic people there of
right.
that land. And as I said, under biblical law, if one believes in the Bible, and billions of people do, and under international law, this is Jewish land. Balfour Declaration, the San Remo Resolution, the Lodge Fish Resolution, the UN Resolution Charter Article 80. I'm naming these things. No one knows
Right.
about these things. But these are under international law, this is legally Israel's land. In fact, it is illegal under international law to give any part of this land away to a non-Jewish entity. I'll read you the sentence. In UN Charter, Article 80 states, this is an exact quote, "It is prohibited for the UN to transfer any rights over any part of Palestine to a non-Jewish entity." That is international law. So you can't establish a state unless Israel supports it.
Right.
It is illegal. And that's why, even though, frankly, 140 countries support a state, it has been established because it's against international law. It's illegal, not to mention immoral and not to mention unjust. That's a separate issue. So,
and yet
Israel never brings up the legal basis.
I don't understand that.
Well,
I don't understand that. But the interesting thing is, that they basically had a state in Gaza. All they had to do was use the money, in my estimation, that was given to them by international organizations to help their people. Instead, they used it to build tunnels and
to build
things.
400 miles of terror tunnels.
Correct. They could have built beautiful hotels, resorts, given people jobs, and so forth.
Well,
By the way, so you know, Mort has Tourette's.
I have
Tourette
Gilles
syndrome.
de la Tourette syndrome,
Yes.
which is a neurochemical disorder that causes me to make sounds I can't control and have facial tics I can't control. I've had it since age 5.
Wow.
That's one of the reasons that the first woman who showed any interest in marrying me, I married her immediately because I didn't want to be alone. I figured no one else is going to put up with my tics.
And what a great woman you have.
So
We
unfortunately, I
love
was
her.
forced to marry a woman who was both blind and deaf, so she's not aware of these tics.
He's joking, because I know his wife, and she's great. We love her. It's funny.
By the way, so the Gaza issue that you just mentioned about how they had a separate entity which could have been a small state,
Right.
and they didn't do it to build a state or to do anything for their people. That proves further it is not about a land or statehood. In fact, I'm holding up a poster.
Right.
I will describe it. This is the official emblem of the Palestinian Authority government that I'm holding up. This is their official, and you see there's a shape of all of Israel, including Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, Gaza, and Israel proper, with a kafir over all of it. Not just over the West Bank and Gaza and Jerusalem, which they claim, but over all of it, with a picture of Arafat in the center, the arch terrorist, and a Kalashnikov rifle. So they, in their emblem, are telling the world clearly, we want all of it. We will never accept Israel. Why isn't this in the front page of the New York Times? Why doesn't everyone talk about this? This is their emblem. I didn't write it. I didn't make it up. This is their official emblem. And I might add, in their charter, the Fatah charter, not the PLO charter, the charter of the government in power in the Palestinian Authority territories headed by Mahmoud Abbas.
In the West Bank, otherwise known as the West Bank.
Otherwise known as the West Bank. Their charter, I'll just read a couple of sentences. We oppose any political solution offered as an alternative to demolishing the Zionist entity in Palestine. We want the complete eradication of the Zionist economic, political, military, and cultural existence. This struggle will not cease until the Zionist state is demolished and Palestine is completely liberated. Armed public revolution is the inevitable method to liberating Palestine. Terrorism. So
Right.
I'm just read you a few of the articles in their official charter. Imagine if Israel had a charter saying things of this nature against Arabs. They openly tell you, we will not accept Israel. We want it all destroyed. We want all of it, and we'll do it by massacring Jewish people, armed struggle. That's why a Palestinian state, if they accepted one, wouldn't end it. As
Right.
long as Israel exists, it won't end it. This is not about land. It's about Israel's existence and murdering Jews and murdering Christians and destroying the West.
It's interesting because Governor Huckabee, who's a good friend of yours, the ambassador to Israel, he states it very well. He's a strong proponent of Israel, obviously, and he's a Christian. Okay, so true Christians, in my estimation, understand it completely.
Because they believe in the Bible.
Right.
And the Bible says God gave this land to the Jews. So that's the beginning. And so as far as a serious Christian is concerned, there's nothing more to talk about.
It's very interesting, yes.
By the way, further evidence, I'm holding up a poster. There are thousands of these posters put up in the high schools and places of higher education in the Palestinian Authority areas. This is one, if you're a terrorist and murder a Jew, they make a poster of you. This is one real poster. I took it off a high school when I was there in the Middle East, calling him in Arabic a hero and a martyr. They honor everyone who has murdered a Jew by putting a poster of him and putting it up to honor him. In addition, and this is really shocking, the Palestinian Authority for years now pay Arabs a lifetime pension to murder a Jew or a Christian. If you murder a Jew or a Christian, you get a lifetime pension at 5 times the average salary of a Palestinian. And they spend $400 million a year paying out these pensions. Who knows about this? When I speak in college campuses, they never heard of this, and they call me a liar. I have to take out my cell phone and show them the proof of it, that they pay Arabs lifetime pensions to murder Jews. Imagine if Israel paid Jews a lifetime pension to murder an Arab or a Christian. The world would go crazy.
Yeah.
There'd be resolutions of the UN, there'd be boycotts. Here, the Palestinian Authority is doing exactly that to this minute. In fact, the 6,000 terrorists who came into Israel and massacred 1,200 Jews, every one of them and or their families are getting a lifetime pensions right now. They're all being paid very handsomely for murdering Jews, and there were some Christians killed too in this massacre.
It's called what? Pay to slay?
Well, pay to slay is the short term for it.
Right.
It's pay to slay because they're paying Arabs a lifetime pension to murder Jews, to slay. So pay to slay is the short term phrase that's used to describe it.
And also,
by the way,
yeah.
Donald Trump passed the Taylor Force Act. The Taylor Force Act is named after a Christian West Point graduate who was murdered in Tel Aviv, and his killer got a lifetime pension. So Trump named a law which was passed called the Taylor Force Act, which says as long as you pay Arabs to murder Jews, Mr. Abbas, Mr. Palestinian Authority, we will not it is illegal for us to give you a penny. We cannot give you any aid. And Trump cut off all the aid. And he said to Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, all you have to do is stop paying people to murder Jews and we'll give you aid. And Abbas
or Christians, for that matter.
And we'll give you aid. And Abbas said, if it's the last pennies we have in our banks, we'll use it to pay these Arabs for killing Jews and Christians. That's what he said. And he cut all the money off. Biden comes in, ignores this law, and doubles the amount of money that America was giving the Palestinian Authority. Doubles it, ignoring the law completely.
No.
That's
Wow.
Joe Biden.
Wow. Wow. And you knew him.
I knew him very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was one of the most, lobbied him many times. He and his staff were among the most hostile people to Israel I ever lobbied. His staff was worse than him. He picked people who really were hostile to Israel. No.
No, I didn't realize that. I knew his background. I didn't realize about his staff, but it doesn't surprise
Those
me.
staffers were awful. They were among the worst I ever lobbied in Capitol Hill. On Israel, on the Israel,
Right.
not other issues, on the Israel issue.
Because you see that Mort has worked in Washington and worked with a number of presidents, so he knows this. Carter, I knew where Carter stood, where Nixon stood to some degree. Ford wasn't around as long, so it was very difficult for me to ascertain where he was coming from. But of the presidents you've worked with, can you tell me who were the most considerate to Israel?
The greatest friend the Jewish state of Israel has ever had in the White House is Donald Trump.
By the way, folks, he's the current president, just in case you didn't know.
Ronald Reagan was a tremendous friend of U.S.-Israel relations. George Bush Sr. was not a friend. George Bush Jr. was a mediocre friend. They were okay, but Trump understands the Arab-Islamic war against Israel and the West. He understands it.
Well, didn't his son-in-law become one of the main people in the Abraham Accords?
Well, Jared Kushner, who married his daughter,
Right.
was a prime advisor and was intimately involved in getting deals done between UAE and Bahrain and Israel and the United States. And now there is significant business relations and tourism between Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, and Israel. So that was something that Donald Trump, with the significant help of his son-in-law,
Right.
Jared Kushner, accomplished.
So those countries have peace with Israel, and they are moderate
Well,
governments.
they still promote a Palestinian state. There's frankly very little tourism from those countries into Israel. It's Israel into those countries.
I get it.
So I mean, it's not a. You know, it could be an even better relationship.
Yeah, it's not
as
a
warm
perfect
as it could be,
relationship.
but it's there are no hostilities.
So what do you see in the future happening in the Middle East?
Well, finally, an easy question.
I'm sorry. I meant it to be much harder. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have
I have
some
difficulty
insight?
predicting things, especially about the future.
So why can't the Phillies win in New York? But that's a whole other thing.
The Phillies are 6 games ahead of the Mets,
I know.
and we've lost Wheeler.
I know.
I'm concerned. And Schwarber has 47 home runs, and not a single double or triple. Only 47 home runs. And every time he hasn't hit a home run, he struck out.
Yeah. Well, there's a price to pay.
That's.
Do you see this being resolved?
Look, the whole world now, more than ever, including mainstream countries like France, Australia, England, are publicly pushing for a state. Is this insane? A Palestinian Arab state? What are the borders of this state? Who's going to run this state? Hamas, terrorist lunatics? Abbas, terrorist lunatic? Who do you have in that that's a leader? This is absurd now. There's no way in earth that if you want a state, it could be set up to be a civilized democracy. The Palestinian Authority had control over this area now for decades. The first election was of Mahmoud Abbas, the dictator. Since 2005, that election where he won, not a single election. Hamas has had no elections for 20 years. It's a dictatorship. Do we want a dictatorship? People say, oh, things will be better if they have their own state. Really? Syria has a state. Libya has a state. Iraq has a state. North Korea has a state. Are they lovely? No, they're horrible. A state doesn't make things better. A state increases the ability of promoting an ugly agenda. It gives a group more power to promote an ugly agenda. A state for the Palestinian Arabs will only give them the power to promote an ugly agenda with more terrorism, more murder, and more hostility. So a state will be a disastrous mistake. And one of the reasons these countries are promoting a state is because so many Muslims now have moved from the Middle East into France and England and Australia. And now they have a voice, just like here in America. Obama and Biden has worked to successfully bring in several million Muslims. Now, I don't care about a person's religion. If you brought in several million Hindus or Buddhists, no problem. Christians, no problem. I have a problem with Muslims because they hate Jews and Christians. This is my problem with bringing in Muslims. So now there's over 3 million Muslims, used to be 1 million, and they've caused enormous hostility toward the Jewish state of Israel and even toward America. So
it's a sad state of affairs that people can't get over their prejudices, because if we could do that, well, I'm saying the obvious, the world would be a much more peaceful place.
In the future, if the Muslim Arabs of the Middle East, if they finally would see the world saying, you will get nothing for your terrorism and you're refusing to have a relation with Israel, you will gain nothing, only misery. If they saw that, I believe ultimately they would start to change. But what does Hamas and the Arabs see? They see Hamas massacres all these Jewish people and some Christians, and the world says, give them a state. Do you know, Joe Biden, a week after this massacre on October 7th, came to Israel, and people are cheering. He came to Israel like he's a friend. On the tarmac, as soon as he got off his plane, he made a speech saying what? 1 week after the massacre, we have to give the Hamas and the Arabs, not Hamas per se, the Arabs a state. 1 week after the atrocities, he's calling for a state. This was a terrible thing to do. This only sent a message that terrorism pays, that it works. That'll only get you more terrorism. If the world would be strong against the terrorist Arab Muslims, and if they would see they will get nothing for their terrorism, then I believe they begin to rethink and at least temporarily try to have some sort of non-hostile resolution of the Middle East. But right now, they're seeing tremendous benefits, and so you're going to get nothing good in the era. in this era. But I do not believe you're ever going to see a Palestinian state. Israel won't allow it. It's against international law.
So hopefully one day, maybe we'll be dirt. Probably will be dirt or something. But maybe there'll be a group of Muslims that say, you know what, let's just have peace with Israel. Let's start getting our technology together. Let's start building businesses. Let's start working together. Because any country that does that is growing.
The reason that hasn't happened is the Koran. It's a religious war. See, it's not about land or relationships.
Right, I get
the
it.
Koran looks at the Jew and the Christian as dhimmis, second-class citizens, and the Jew or the Christian is not allowed to have any of this land in the Middle East. They're considered Arab land. That's why they continue the war. And by the way, I might show a map of the Middle East.
Yes.
I'm holding up a map of the Middle East. The orange shows the 22 Arab countries, for those who can see it or will see it. In the center, you can't even see the yellow, which is Israel. The Arab countries are 800 times the size
You mean
of
the
Israel.
white?
It's yellow.
It is?
Yeah. Well,
oh yeah, okay. Light yellow,
the Arab
yeah.
countries are 800 times the size of Israel, and yet they're screaming land for peace, asking Israel to give more land to the 22 Arab countries. I mean, so this is how tiny Israel is, and this is how massive the Arab Muslim world is in the Middle East. Massive. I mean, look at the size of Saudi Arabia. You know, Iran's not even here because Iran is a Muslim country, not Arab.
Right.
But this huge country of Iran, this Muslim country, they also have a tremendous amount of land. Even Jordan is 6-7 times the size of Israel. There's Egypt, gigantic.
Huge.
Libya, Algeria, Sudan, gigantic. And yet the world is screaming for Israel to give land away?
Algeria is huge.
Huge. Morocco is large. Even Yemen, is 20 times the size of Israel. Yemen, Oman, you don't even know about the size of those countries. So people should understand the geography.
And so our viewers and listeners know this. You have been to a number of those countries, haven't you?
To many of them.
You've met with the heads of
Been to
state.
UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan. I've been to all those countries.
And you met with heads of state.
I've met with the kings and the emirs. Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I had a 2-hour meeting with the emir of Qatar in his palace. For 2 hours I met with him going over these things. And when I came out, my driver, they gave me a driver for the whole time I was there, was white as a ghost when I came out. I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "The meetings with the emir is usually 10 or 15 minutes. He doesn't meet with people for 2 hours. I thought they arrested you and maybe killed you already." That's what he said to me, the driver.
Really?
I thought they arrested you and that you were already dead. Because
Wow.
nobody meets for 2 hours. For some reason he met with me for 2 hours.
I hope you had some good times with him at least.
Oh yeah, I went to all the nightclubs. I had a great time.
You talk about the Phillies?
I mentioned the Phillies. They didn't know what that guy was talking about. No. So by the way, Doha, Qatar, the capital city, beautiful city. UAE, Bahrain, their cities are gorgeous, really beautiful.
Yeah, and all they have to do is just make peace with this little country. Tel Aviv is a beautiful city.
But the Quran tells them that Israel's land is Arab land. They have no right to have it, and they will keep fighting until they get this land.
The interesting thing to me, and this goes back to even the Old Testament, the biblical times, is that came thousands of years before the Quran, thousands of years before the New Testament. Okay, so.
But the Muslims consider Abraham, right? Abraham is several thousand years before Islam was created or began in 700 A.D., and they consider Abraham one of their prophets.
In 700 A.D., but he was born thousands of years
earlier.
before.
They consider Moses one of their prophets. They consider Jesus one of their prophets. Yeah. So it makes no sense to me. But this is their religion.
Well, it's interesting because when I was at the Blue Mosque in Istanbul,
beautiful building.
Beautiful. We were there together, I think, and you see that the prophets And I went, wait a minute here. 3 of the main prophets before Muhammad are Jews. So what's up with this?
It doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. But hopefully those listening and watching have gained some insight and sense. Now I get it. Some of you may disagree or scream and yell or whatever, make crazy comments down below. But I hope what you did was listen and gain some knowledge about the history of what's going on in the Middle East from a man who's worked with 3 presidents, the current president, emirs.
You were there when we honored Donald Trump at our gala dinner.
There.
You were there.
And he spoke very highly of you a number of times, as did Bernie Marcus, who passed away. He was a co-founder of Home Depot. And you met with all these kings, and you're gracing us on Digging for Gold. Mort, thank you so much. Folks, watch this entire thing. Tell your friends, and maybe you'll gain some insights into what's going on, and maybe it will create the steps for peace in the world. As long as we can't have peace if we keep going at each other's throats. But you also have to understand history, why people are doing what they're doing, so that you can get into their culture and maybe change some minds. Let's have some peace for a change. Thank you for all you do, Mort. Thank you for all you do. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan, for having me.
Well, folks, it's been my pleasure. Please subscribe. Digging for Gold on Spotify, and Dan G for you too on YouTube, and Digging for Gold is on there. Thank you, folks. Thank you so much, Mort. It's been great.
Thank you very much.